Just ahead on American Black Journal, who actually killed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? We'll have an in-depth conversation about the conspiracy theory behind his death 50 years ago. Plus, a Detroit entrepreneur launches a program to help develop the next generation of civic leaders. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Ford has a long history of honoring the achievements of great men and women. We also recognize that honoring means ensuring their legacies are carried forward. 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. To continue his legacy, Ford is partnering with the King Center and encouraging everyone to perform 50 acts of kindness. Between now and August 28, go to MLK54.org and register your act of kindness. Add Ford in the group name, as Ford will recognize select actions from our Southeast Michigan community. Perform your simple act of kindness, and together we'll carry forward Dr. King's dream of creating a beloved community.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. April 4th marked the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. Several events were held across the country to commemorate this somber moment in our history. Here in Detroit, the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History hosted a lecture focusing on the controversy surrounding Dr. King's murder. Information contained in a book titled "The Plot to Kill King: The Truth Behind the Assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr." alleges that James Earl Ray was innocent and Dr. King's death was the result of a government conspiracy. The book's author spoke at the museum event, and I'm pleased to have him here today. I'd like to welcome William Pepper, former attorney for the King family. Also here is social justice and civil rights attorney Carl Edwards, who moderated the program at the right. Welcome, both of you, to American Black Journal.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I want to start with you and talk about the surprise that I think a lot of people who are watching might have at the idea behind your book, the idea that James Earl Ray did not kill Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and that there was a government plot that did that. In the sort of simplest terms, explain how you come to that conclusion.
Well, I've had the good fortune or misfortune to spend over 40 years looking into this case because I came to know Martin King the last year of his life, and we became quite close. So it was a slippery slope once I got started on this, but it took me 10 years of initial investigation before I came to the conclusion that James Earl Ray was not only not the shooter, but that he was an unknowing patsy. And so from 1988 till he died in 1998, I represented James and tried to get him a trial, and I failed.
And this was something that he asserted as well.
James initially pleaded guilty.
Right.
He had been talked into changing lawyers, and his lawyer conned him into believing he was going to get a trial, and then went the other way, and eventually told James he couldn't defend him properly because he had a problem with his health.
Yeah.
And he offered James $500 if he would plead guilty, put that in writing, copy of which we have, and gave that $500 to his brother and said, James, you plead guilty, cause no problems at the guilty plea hearing, and you can then use the $500, get a new lawyer, overturn the guilty plea, and get your trial, which of course never happened.
Yeah. When we think of famous assassinations, and especially famous or notable assassinations of the 1960s, John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, we've seen these kind of theories crop up around those killings as well. Is it your theory that these are all related conspiracies?
Well, I haven't looked heavily into any of the other conspiracies except the Robert Kennedy one. I also represent Sirhan. But it's only based on evidence and factual evidence that I've come to these conclusions. It's not a theory.
Right.
We have depositional witness evidence. We had a trial in the case of the King the assassination. We tried a case for 30 days with 70 witnesses.
Yeah.
That was in 1999. And 16 years after that, we then have uncovered a very powerful amount of facts that show that James was innocent, and that in fact it was a government operation.
Yeah, yeah. And you want to sort of step back and put these events in some context. The government was very worried about what Martin Luther King Jr. was doing. For most of his professional career, they had become particularly worried by the late 1960s by the change in his work and the change in the focus.
Yes, Stephen. You know, I looked through Dr. Pepper's book, especially the last one, Plot to Kill King, through a legal lens, obviously. And I do a fair amount of appellate work, which means brief work.
Right.
I love doing it. And for me, the test is the evidence. Not only has Dr. Pepper amassed a considerable body of what we call circumstantial evidence, but he has also developed a considerable body of direct evidence in the form of the son, Ron Atkins, of the father, Russell Atkins, where the assassination was planned, at the home. So Dr. Pepper has accumulated not only direct evidence through the testimony of the son that the murder was planned at his father and the family home, but the connection between Clyde Tolson, who was the #2 man in the FBI next to J. Edgar Hoover, organized crime figures who were present in the home, and the Dixie Mafia, which was headed by his father, Russell, the local chief of police, Holloman, as well as the mayor, they were all in the family home plotting the
Talking
murder.
about
That's right, what they were going to do.
What they were going to do.
That's right, and who was going to do it and who was involved. So, you know, as Dr. Pepper says, we look at evidence, we look at facts. This is not speculation now. And for me, when I see the deposition of a 16-year-old son who was present, who was involved in and at the planning of the assassination, it leads to a very strong conclusion that the FBI and the federal government, the mafia, the Dixie Mafia, which was the Ku Klux Klan, the mayor and others were involved in the assassination of this great man.
Yeah. Talk about the difficulty you've had getting this into sort of popular acceptance. As you say, you've spent a long time working on this and amassed all of this evidence. How come people are not popularly sort of repeating this as fact?
Well, because the corporate mainstream media has decided to suppress the truth and the evidence that has been uncovered. Not only with respect to this case, as Carl has succinctly said, but with respect to the other assassinations as well. The mass of Americans have never been allowed to see this evidence, to hear this evidence. It has never been allowed to be heard in court under an evidentiary hearing or a trial. So it's been very difficult for the American public to understand what this is all about. And government apologists continue to call this kind of opposition to the official position, conspiracy theorists. That's all they are.
Right.
And just dismiss all what Carla said, all the evidence and the hard facts that have emerged.
He was talking about the meetings that took place where this was planned. Talk about some of the other evidence that for you is just there's a sort of overwhelming proof that this was a conspiracy and not James Earl Ray.
J. Edgar Hoover sent his number 2, Clyde Tolson, as Carl mentioned, into Memphis on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. He came in with money to pay off informants and actors and instructions as to what the steps should be. For example, James Earl Ray never knew it, but his escape from prison was arranged with $25,000 that Tolson brought in and gave to Russell Atkins, who drove to the prison with the son, Ronnie, that Carl mentioned, to deliver that $25,000 to Warden Swenson to arrange for the escape of James Earl Ray, because they had profiled him as an excellent con if he was out on the streets, whom they could manipulate and they could use as a patsy. Mm-hmm. So that money was taken to Swenson, given to him, and sure enough, James Earl Ray was allowed to escape from prison. Yeah. I mean, that's a hard fact. Eyewitness, the son was an eyewitness to that, the delivery of those funds. Uh-huh. As was he told to call Clyde Tolson Uncle Clyde, who became very close to his father and the family.
Mm-hmm. But what sort of things did James Earl Ray say to you later in his life about how all this happened and how he felt about it?
Well, James felt very badly that he was used this way, but he only became aware of being handled and manipulated by a handler called Raoul, whom we found where he lived, had him under surveillance, so there was no question that we had the right guy. But James was, in many ways, was ashamed that he had been so used and so conned, and told Dexter King, when Dexter King asked him, did you kill my father? And James quite rightly said, no, I didn't do it, and that's what he maintained throughout. Mm-hmm. And he only identified Raoul one time from a set of 6 photographs. He was shown hundreds of other photographs. He never identified Raoul. But from this one set of 6 that we developed, he was able to identify the man we came to know as his handler, Raoul.
Yeah. What are we to draw from this 50 years later? What lesson do you feel we're supposed to be taking from not just what happened, but this story that has not really gotten the light of day?
Excellent question, Stephen. For me, it's 2 takeaways, both as an attorney, as an American citizen, fiercely loyal to this country and believes passionately in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. The King family, Mrs. King, Coretta Scott King, all embrace Dr. Pepper's findings. Secondly, how can you pinpoint an assassin when the bullet which they had from Dr. King's death doesn't match the gun?
The gun. Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can you then go with the fiction that he's the killer, mm-hmm. since you're saying this was the weapon that he dropped, and it doesn't match? Secondly, they tested the rifle, and if I was aiming at you at this distance, I couldn't hit you with it. It was that off. Mm-hmm. And so the lesson is that when there are great people and persons who are placed in our midst that want to take this country on the road that Dr. King wanted to take us, mm-hmm. and that road is very clear: mm-hmm. brotherhood, mm-hmm. sisterhood. He wanted black kids and white kids to play together. He wanted the scourge of slavery and Jim Crow left from the American landscape.
And importantly, he wanted the sort of economic interest, the common economic interest of poor people of all hues to be fought together.
So clearly there are very vast and powerful forces that don't want that agenda. Yeah. And that's the lesson.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. Great to meet you and talk about your work.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Mm-hmm.
Up next, financial support for aspiring Detroit leaders. But first, we're taking a look back at some of the guests on this program over the last 50 years. Here's a 1993 Detroit Black Journal interview with Dr. Martin Luther King's widow, Coretta Scott King, about the mission of the King Center in Atlanta.
We need to revolutionize values in order to redirect our priorities. We have misdirected priorities in this nation. But if your values are not right, then your priorities are going to be mixed up. And our values have begun, we don't have the value system that we once had, and we've got to come back to it. And I saw this as an opportunity with no Martin Luther King Jr. We needed to use this opportunity because we may not have it again. A man of his magnitude, of his ultimate goodness and commitment, only comes once in perhaps a century, maybe even a millennium. And so I thought it was like God giving us another chance. And so my contribution would be to make sure that Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision and dream of a beloved world community where all God's children could live together in peace with justice and prosperity would become a reality.
My next guest has built up quite a resume and is one of the area's emerging African-American leaders. As the former CFO for Wayne County, he helped keep the county out of bankruptcy. He served as emergency manager for Benton Harbor and provided turnaround and crisis management services for Detroit Public Schools and the Skillman Foundation. Now he's giving back by awarding scholarships and internships to students at his alma mater, Cass Technical High School. I'd like to welcome Tony Saunders, Managing Director of Volt Advisors, to American Black Journal. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's first talk about the scholarships that you are sponsoring at Cass Tech. Really huge move to try to not just make sure people go to college. Here you're aiming at the idea of developing people as civic leaders.
Yeah, so this is something we've actually always wanted to do. I had two friends in high school, Brandon and Dennis, and we called ourselves the Three Amigos. And we always said we would do this. And so kind of this is the first step, kind of looking back at the high school that really created a lot of kind of who I am today. Yeah.
The idea of civic leadership and the idea that it starts when you're in high school, where did you get that from?
Yeah, so talent, right? Being in government, I've seen that as the biggest void that we've had. And the ability to develop that talent early and often, I think is important. And so the goal of this is to get people at least to start thinking about a career in public service, whether it's in government or some not-for-profit or even in business, but having a lens towards a greater good.
Yeah. When you were that age, was civic leadership one of the things you were thinking about?
No, I was selling candy.
That's important too.
Yeah, but my father was a police officer.
Yeah.
And so I've seen him give service to the city, and it's something that I think was just kind of in the spirit of the family. But it wasn't something that I was intentionally thinking about. And I think with the public discussion that we're having on a national scale, it's important that we don't create an environment where people are, kind of incentivized not to get involved in their communities. So this is hopefully a small step in that direction.
Yeah. And one of the things I really like about this is the sort of wraparound nature of it, right? You're not just handing money to these kids to say, all right, go off and get a college education. You're also going to sort of stay with them, right, through these internships and other kind of things.
Yeah, I've been so lucky. I've realized the biggest lesson or experience that you can give is just exposure.
Yeah.
And I've kind of just been plopped in these places, and I've been so thankful for the people who have been behind me. So hopefully we can, create an environment where kids are exposed to the various industries that we have to offer in the city.
Yeah. You're also part of the group that recently bought the St. Regis Hotel. One of the really important spaces in Midtown Detroit. It's a place where I had like my senior luncheon in high school back in the late 1980s. Talk about the importance of that space and making that space sort of grand again.
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to acquire the space from the Swanson family and a few other families who've done a good job in keeping that hotel, you know, to the standard in which it is today. But you know, that area is so important to our city. Yeah. So you see downtown and midtown that it's thriving and property values are higher than they've ever been. That area is just naturally next. And so we hope to serve as an anchor for that area. We'll be starting renovations very, very soon. And we hope to kind of bring the grandeur that it once had. We hope to bring it back.
Yeah. Your career has been about, I feel like, making things work again, making things grand again. The Wayne County, the financial problems that they had when you went there, Benton Harbor. Talk about where we are with that process as a state. Are we doing better to prevent those things from happening in the first place? Or are we still in the idea of, you know, triage once the disaster strikes?
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
And I think the governor has done a really good job of reacting to the situation that was kind of put before him. The mayor's doing the best job that he can at reacting to the environment around him. However, we need to have a broader kind of public policy discussion in our state. Schools still need a lot of improvement. Public safety is definitely not where it needs to be. You know, those things are all driven in part by an inequity in funding that we have in our state. And so we need to kind of really look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, what type of state, what type of place do we want to be? But we're clearly not there yet.
Yeah, and you're one of the few African-American voices at that table, right? One of the few African-Americans who's really been on the front lines of that conversation. And that's important. I mean, it's important that the people who are most affected by these things, especially in places like Detroit or Benton Harbor, Flint, that were represented in the decision-making as well.
Yeah, you know, Warren Evans actually helped me understand that, right? So he's our highest-ranking African-American official in our state, and I've never seen anybody that take that responsibility to heart the way he does. And so kind of learning from him, working for him, helped me understand the responsibility that I had in that very moment. So, you know, I do think it's important, and part of the scholarship is to make sure that we have a pipeline of the next generation that can keep that tradition going.
Yeah, yeah. When you look at Cass Tech today, Cass Tech when you were there, do you feel like we're doing enough there even to produce that next generation of black leaders?
I think Principal Phillips at Cass, I mean, she's doing an amazing job. And I just took a tour of the school a couple weeks ago, and I was amazed. You know, one, how big it was, how beautiful it was, but the diversity of talent and people that we have. I think Cass Tech is one of the brightest and most shining moments and opportunities that we have in the city. So I think they're doing a great job, but I still think we can do better, even at Cass and across the state.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the idea of this scholarship, I know from talking to you, is set the example, right? Yeah. There's lots of people in this community who have the ability to help the folks who are coming up now get opportunities that we had when we were kids. I always say if each of us did just a little bit, this would be a really different place.
Yeah, I hope. And part of it is a natural obligation that we have, just as citizens, right? Just as human beings. Clearly, you know, $25,000 isn't going to change the world, but it might help somebody to change the world.
Right.
And so, you know, I think we have that obligation, and hopefully this sets an example for others to get in the game.
Yeah, yeah. The scholarships will take place, they'll kick in next year, and they'll go from there. Right?
Yeah, so this fall, we'll be selecting winners any day now.
Yeah.
And this fall, there'll be money in an account, and somebody will realize what it feels like to be a college freshman.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. All right, well, congratulations on the program, and thanks very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, that's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Ford has a long history of honoring the achievements of great men and women. We also recognize that honoring means ensuring their legacies are carried forward. 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. To continue his legacy, Ford is partnering with the King Center and encouraging everyone to perform 50 acts of kindness. Between now and August 28, go to MLK54.org and register your act of kindness. Add Ford in the group name, as Ford will recognize select actions from our Southeast Michigan community. Perform your simple act of kindness, and together we'll carry forward Dr. King's dream of creating a beloved community.